I never should have taken this job. It seemed like an easy gig, just a few hours of walking the dimly lit halls of an old hospital, keeping an eye on the cameras, and ensuring that no one wandered in. The pay was decent, and I figured it would be a good way to save some money while I figured out my next move in life. But St. Augustine's Hospital was not just any hospital. It was a relic of the past, a place steeped in mystery and shadow, abandoned for over 30 years following some incident that had been buried under layers of silence. The walls were peeling, the air thick with the scent of mildew, and the remnants of its former life lay scattered about. Rusted gurneys, dust-covered equipment, and empty rooms that echoed with the whispers of forgotten stories. For the first 2 weeks, my nights were uneventful. I walked the halls, checked the monitors, and sipped the terrible coffee that seemed to be a staple of the security office. I grew accustomed to the eerie stillness, the way the shadows danced just beyond the reach of my flashlight. The stories I'd heard about the hospital's dark past were just that, stories. I didn't believe in ghosts or hauntings. I was just there to do a job and collect my paycheck. But then came that night, the night that shattered my complacency. I was in the security office staring at the flickering screens when the monitor for camera 6 glitched. Static filled the air, and I leaned in closer, curious. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the feed cleared to reveal the East Wing, a part of the building that had been sealed off for decades. My heart raced as I watched a hospital bed move on its own, gliding down the hallway as if propelled by unseen hands. The sheets lifted, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone was getting up, and then I saw her. A girl, thin and pale, wearing an old patient gown. She looked directly at the camera, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a connection that was both haunting and sorrowful. She whispered something, but there was no sound, only the oppressive silence that enveloped the hospital. My instincts screamed at me to ignore it, to stay in the safety of the office, but curiosity clawed at my mind. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the East Wing. When I reached the doors, I was met with chains, heavy and rusted. But as I reached out to touch them, they fell to the ground with a clatter, as if released from some unseen force. My blood turned to ice, but I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The air shifted, becoming colder and thicker, wrapping around me like a shroud. The hallway stretched out before me, lined with remnants of the past, rusted gurneys, shattered glass, and flickering lights that cast eerie shadows along the walls. And then I saw her again, the girl from the camera, standing at the end of the hall. Her eyes were dark and hollow, yet they held a depth of sorrow that I couldn't ignore. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Are you lost?" She didn't respond, but simply lifted her hand and pointed toward a door on my right. Room 206. The door was slightly ajar, and as I stepped inside, I was met with the sight of an old, rusted hospital bed and a pile of scattered patient files. Something compelled me to look closer. I picked up a yellowed file and my breath caught in my throat. The name on the file was Eleanor Carter, age 12, cause of death, unresolved. My heart raced as I realized the significance of that name. Eleanor was my aunt, a family member I had only heard whispers about, an unresolved tragedy that had haunted my family for decades. She had died here, alone and forgotten, her case lost to time when the hospital was shut down. In that moment, everything clicked into place. This girl, this spirit, wasn't here to haunt me or frighten me. She was searching for recognition, for someone to remember her, to acknowledge the pain and loss she had endured. I turned back toward the hallway, and Eleanor stood there, her form less shadowy, more human. I swallowed hard, my heart aching for her. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You weren't forgotten." For the first time, she smiled, a soft, fragile smile that seemed to light up the darkness around her. And then, just like that, she faded away. The next morning, I quit my job. I couldn't shake the weight of what I had learned, the responsibility I felt to honor my aunt's memory. I spent weeks researching, making phone calls, and piecing together the fragments of her life. I discovered that she had been buried in an unmarked grave, a victim of a system that had failed her. I couldn't let that stand. I organized a proper burial, ensuring she had a headstone, a place where she could be seen, remembered, and mourned. Since that night, I haven't had a single nightmare. St. Augustine's Hospital has been completely renovated, transformed from a place of dread into a space of healing. No more strange noises or moving beds, just a peaceful silence that seems to breathe life into the walls. I often think of Eleanor, of the connection we shared in that fleeting moment. Sometimes ghosts don't want to scare you. Sometimes they just want to go home. And in giving her that, I found a sense of closure for myself as well. I had not only unearthed a family secret, but had also learned the importance of remembrance, of honoring those who came before us, even when their stories have been lost to time.